Balak, even though this year the two Parshiot are not connected, but B'ezrat Hashem we're going to connect them, because I will not be here next week. Next week, B'ezrat Hashem, there will be a very interesting lecture by Rabbi Yinon Kalazan in English at the same time over here. Yinon Kalazan. Right. And the flyers, I believe, will be here soon, so you will be able to see what it's about. If we think for a moment about the Yetzer Hara, the evil instinct, the evil inclination all of us have, what comes to our mind first? What is his job? How would we best describe his position, his job? There are many ways to describe his job, but in a nutshell, as we say in English, the job of the Yetzer Hara is to distance the human being from the Almighty. That's his job. He does it in many ways. The Yetzer Hara has many ways and means through which he causes man to distance himself from the Almighty, but that's his main job. Chet, as we call it, a sin, is also a means by which one distances himself from the Almighty. If one commits a chet, and there are various names to Hata'im, there is a Shegaga, there is Avon. The word chet means that we miss out something. We call it a transgression. It has various names. But the common denominator of all of them, regardless of the name, is that they create distance between us and the Almighty. In the Sefer Vayikra, we became familiar with korbanot and vidui, which is a way to repair the hata'im. If one was distant, he can become close again. What we find in Parashat Chukat, as opposed to Sefer Vayikra, is something else that creates distance between us and Borei Olam, and that's called Tum'ah. Impurity, impure forces that also create distance between us and Hashem. And we also find a way to repair that Tum'ah, how to correct that, how to remove that, and that's called the Para Aduma. There are various forms of Tum'ot, and there are various means of how to remove the Tum'ah, but in Parashat Chukat, we deal with the most severe form of Tum'ah, Tumat Met, from a dead individual, and with the most powerful form of Tahara, that which is called Para Aduma, the red heifer. This is a very unique situation because we're not dealing with an ordinary Tum'ah, we're dealing with a Tum'ah that lasts for 7 days, which means no matter what you do, you have to still wait this amount of time for this powerful Tum'ah to disappear. Even if you do everything properly, you still need that time. So we're dealing with perhaps one of the most powerful, not hata'im, but powerful forces in the world that create distance between us and the Almighty. So it's important for us to try to understand this power and how to deal with it. What you see when you begin to read the parasha is the word Chukat. What is Chukat? A decree. What's the difference between a decree and a regular mitzvah? The regular mitzvot, the mishpatim, make some sense. Many of them are logical, like honor your parents. Anytime you're dealing with a chok, it's a decree, it's not so logical. Every mitzvah has a reason, but we don't readily see or understand it. It's a chok. The chok of Para Aduma, how Para Aduma works, is very, very interesting, very unique, because it is also a way by which one becomes tahor, clean, but it's also a way by which one becomes tameh. The same ashes, the same process of becoming clean can cause an individual to become tameh. The exact same thing. So it's a very strange procedure, how this comes about. We cannot understand fully how this mitzvah works, but by looking at the description of the Para Aduma, we can gain some insight as to the power of Tum'ah and the power of Tahara. How Tahara is able to cancel Tum'ah. And what are the conditions for the Para Aduma? 3 conditions. Condition number 1, Para Aduma Temima, completely red. Second condition, Ashe'en Bamum, that it has no physical defect that will disqualify it. And the third condition, which is very unique only to Para Aduma, not to any other sacrifice, Ashe'lo ala aleha ol, that no yoke was placed on it. If somebody put his talit on it, that's it. It would not qualify for Para Aduma. We can gain a little bit of insight from these 3 conditions. What do they mean? even though the three have to do with the cow, the three also shed some light as to the power of tahara, the power of our faith, how to combat the tum'ah. So let's begin with tamimah. Tamimah means complete, tamim, as the pasuk says, tamim tiyeh im Hashem Elokecha, referring to one's faith. One faith has to be strong, but what does strong mean? It means complete, that we never waver in our faith. That's a very important condition, as I will explain later, a very important condition in being able to drive away all those that harass us, all those influences outside that endanger us. So the emunah has to be emunah tamimah. Condition number 2, ashe'en bamum, that there are no physical defects. It refers to defects or holes in our service, in our avodat Hashem. And I will elaborate a little bit more about that later. What does it mean, holes in the avodah of Hashem? And number 3, asher lo ala alea ol, that there is no other yoke, that we do not divide our attention between the service of Hashem and something else. This is priority number 1, and everything is less important in it. We cannot show the same love and give the same attention equally to this and to that. It's not possible. Asher lo ala alea ol means that we do not accept upon ourselves any other yoke, any other burden. Now, why is this all important? Because as I just said, tum'ah is something very powerful. And people become tameh, whether they want it or not. Sometimes you just fall into it. You come in contact with it. You do not intentionally want to become tameh. And since this tum'ah imprisons us, shackles us, there has to be a way, the Torah has to offer us a way to release ourselves from it. So it's important for us to know how to get out of it. But I think all of you would agree it's better to avoid it altogether, because once you're trapped with it, no matter what you do, it's difficult. As I said before, the tum'ah of met requires time too to get rid of it. So because it's difficult to remove the tum'ah, it is always advisable, it's always in the best of our interest, to avoid it at all costs. How is it possible for one to become tameh if he did not get in contact with tum'ah? The typical tum'ah is you touch, right? There's another heavy-duty tum'ah, the tum'ah of met, that you don't have to touch. It suffices that you be in the same room. A kohen would have a problem being in this room if there was a met here, even though he's not touching him. Because the ohel, the room in which he's in, brings about the tum'ah on all those who are present and all the kelim, the vessels that are here. Everything becomes tameh. The tum'ah of a met is a very, very heavy-duty tum'ah. So you don't have to do anything. Touching makes sense. Being in the room doesn't make so much sense, but it's a very heavy-duty form of tum'ah. There's one more additional way of how one can become tameh. Anybody know? Besides touching, besides being in the same room. How does a Jew become tameh? As soon as his neshama leaves him. As soon as the neshama departs, what happens immediately? He becomes tameh. Why? The neshama is holy. And as soon as the holy neshama, the Kabbalah explains, as soon as the holy neshama leaves this body, this vessel, the tum'ah all over the world tries to invade and occupy this shell that has some sparks of kedusha, or that had kedusha, and it tries to occupy it. As opposed to a non-Jew. A non-Jew does not have the exact same problem of tum'ah, even though a kohen, according to the halakha, is not allowed to touch a non-Jewish body too. But according to most opinions, the tum'ah of ohel, at least, does not apply to a non-Jew. The tum'ah of a Jew, a dead Jew, is much more severe. Why? Because by a goy, he always belonged to the sitra achara, to the other side. The tum'ah was always part of his life. The neshama comes from that other side. Whereas the neshama in a Jew comes from the kedusha, from a different source. Right? We're not trying to say that one is better or one is worse over here. We're just trying to explain that the two come from different areas, from different sides. As a result of the Jew's neshama coming from the kedusha, once that neshama leaves, the tumah wants to occupy that kedusha. The tumah wants kedusha. The tumah nourishes from the kedusha. And that is why a Jew becomes, in a sense, more tameh when he dies than a non-Jew. So what did we just say? That other than touching, other than being in the same room, one becomes tameh when his neshama leaves him. How about when one is alive? When one is alive, one can become tameh if he on his own drives away the tumah, the kedusha. How does one drive away the kedusha? By inviting the tumah. Come. The tumah would not come by itself. It has no permission. The kedusha is there. You either have to touch it, embrace it, be in the same room, or invite it into your house. That is how one can become tameh. Now, here I'm not talking about technically tameh, because one can only technically be tameh if he's in the same room or if he touches. I'm talking more right now in spiritually speaking, one who drives away his neshama while he's alive. In other words, one who drives away all the kedusha that he has in him, by inviting the tumah, he's becoming tameh, spiritually. And we need to understand how that happens. In other words, what is it that one does that drives away the kedusha and brings about the tumah? So there are various ma'asim, and they all have to do with the three conditions that I mentioned of the paraduma. They were temimut, completeness, that there's no physical defect, and number three, ashelo alei ha'ol. Let's deal with temimut first. How does the Torah describe paraduma? It tells us that zot chukat Torah, it's a decree. And because it's a decree, if somebody asks you, what's the explanation for this mitzvah, and it's one of those hukim, what's the best answer? Asher tziva Hashem lemor. I don't know, Hashem said so. If you want to avoid arguments, if you don't know the answer to something, that's the easiest way out. And it's not only the easiest way out, it's a very good answer. Because what you're saying is, we are limited. We as human beings can never fathom and never fully understand the mitzvot of Hashem. It's not possible. We think we're smart, but we're not. Our mind is limited. Just like a cat, a dog, their mind is limited. Human beings should not think for a moment that he's unlimited in being able to understand everything. Just like we can't see everything, we can't understand everything. The best answer, Asher Tziva Hashem. Why can't we eat non-kosher food? For health reasons? No. Hashem Tziva Kacha. Hashem said so. You don't like it? Well, too bad. That's why I do so. That's why I observe this. Because Hashem says so. It's good enough for me. If you trust in Hashem, believe in Hashem, that should be a good enough answer. Especially when it comes to hukim, that we have a difficult time understanding and trying to defend ourselves. Somebody ever asks you, even though the rabbis tell us, Dama shetashiv lapikoras, you should be as knowledgeable as possible so you know how to handle an apikoras, a person who's not a non-believer. Nevertheless, even with these individuals, you could say, why? Because Hashem said so. That is the best answer. Why is this a good answer? Because it helps preserve our temimut. If we start thinking, wait a minute, really, why did Hashem say so? What's the logic behind it? You begin to dilute your temimut. You begin to weaken your faith. As soon as you say, Hashem said so, and that's good enough for me, it was good enough for my parents, it was good enough for my grandparents, it's good enough for me, that does not weaken you. Because you don't have to come up with an answer. You don't have to defend yourself. So therefore, one way of not weakening your emunah is not losing that tmimut. How do you not lose that tmimut? By not having to figure out every mitzvah. Why does Hashem command us with this mitzvah? Because He command. He knows better. Hashem said so. The second condition, Asher en vamum, is a very, very important condition too. Asher en vamum means that there are no physical defects, that there are no holes, I said before. What do we mean by holes? Holes in the wall that protects Judaism. Now listen carefully to this. Many of you perhaps are aware from the news, in the past year or so, Israel is busy making a wall. A wall that they claim will help prevent suicide bombers from coming in, uninvited. Does that help? Do you think it will help? We've already had some come in and explode themselves despite their walls. Who else made a big wall? The Chinese. Helped a little bit, but in the end, it was easily overrun. They went around it. All it did was to make it more difficult for the enemy. But is it penetrable? Of course. There's another kind of wall. In a soccer field, there is the goalie. You know what his job is? To protect the goal area. Can he stop every goal? No. What do we see from this? That any physical barrier can be penetrated. Is there any barrier that cannot be penetrated? What about bars in the windows? People put those up so the thieves should not enter. Can they be overcome? I heard the story of somebody, apparently he knew that the owners were away. He just came with a big truck, attached some chains or ropes to the bars and pulled them off. What's the big deal? There are no physical barriers that cannot be overcome. They can all be penetrated. So which choma, which wall cannot be penetrated? A wall which is a spiritual wall. A spiritual wall cannot be penetrated unless it is broken by the individual himself, who's protecting himself from the inside. If you set up, and I'll tell you what those spiritual walls are in a moment. If you set up a spiritual wall around you, nothing can penetrate it. Nothing can break it down unless you on your own break it down. In Judaism, there are three spiritual walls, three important spiritual walls. The first wall is the wall of the Torah. The second wall is the wall of the mouth, and I'll explain that later. The third wall is the wall of tzniut, of modesty. These are three very important walls. Throughout history, you may recall, unfortunately, many Jewish communities were slaughtered, right? Many of them were given the chance to convert in Spain, in Mashhad, in Iran, and in other places where they had a chance to not be killed, to survive, if they were willing to give up their religion. What did they do? Many of them, Baruch Hashem, of course, did not give up their religion. What was going on in their mind? The physical body can be killed and destroyed, but what remains is the neshama. So what's more important? To preserve the neshama. Let's not allow the enemy to kill our neshama. Our Kadosh Baruch Hu can always give us a new body. And every time we come back, we enter a new body. That's what Gilgul is all about. So even though we are, of course, saddened when somebody is killed, in reality, he's not lost forever. The neshama survives. As long as the neshama was able to protect itself while it was alive. So we're always, historically, we were always more concerned for the neshama of the Jew than for his physical body. People ask me, Rabbi, we've been around longer than the Chinese. How come they're over 1 billion and we're only 15 million? There are several reasons for that. The most important reason, although I should say the most prominent factor, is that we were prosecuted and slaughtered in almost every generation. There has been some assimilation too. But what have we lost? Only physical bodies. The neshama, many, many times, was preserved. We were able to defend our neshama. We can defend our neshama. We cannot always guarantee the defense of our physical body. We're at the mercy of our enemies, even though that's also min hashamayim. We have to be much more concerned about our neshama, because that is up to us. Nobody can touch our neshama if we don't let him, unless we do something to ourselves. Why do I tell you this whole mashal with walls? Because what is going to happen 2 weeks from now? We're going to be fasting. We're going to be fasting on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, on the 17th day of Tammuz. Anybody know why? Several terrible things happened on that day. One of them was that the wall during the second temple was penetrated. Nifke'a ha'choma. They laid a siege and they broke through the wall. But wait a minute, 3 weeks later is Tisha B'Av. We already have a very, very serious fast, 24 hours on Tisha B'Av. Why make another fast on the 17th day of Tammuz? Is it so important? Is it so significant that we have to make another fast 3 weeks before? And the answer perhaps is as follows. As you know, a dam is a very, very powerful wall. But all you need is a small hole. And once the small hole develops, the whole dam is in danger of collapsing. Am Yisrael therefore has to be very careful from all these small holes in its own wall. The problem is that Shiva Asar B'Tammuz is a very, very big blow, not to the wall, to the physical wall, but to the spiritual wall. Because we allowed ourselves to make small holes which eventually led to the rupture of the entire wall. As it is mentioned, I think, in the Midrash, Hechal Saruf Sarafta. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells the king who's about to destroy the Beit HaMikdash, don't think you are destroying, you are burning this place down. Zekvar Saruf. You are burning a destroyed temple. They've already destroyed it themselves. Now, anybody who knows about soccer over here, what's the worst kind of a goal? There's different kinds of goal. There's a goal from the corner. There's a goal with the head. Video. Goal atzmi. And I think in English it's called an auto goal. When the team who's protecting its own area, they themselves take the ball into their own area. It's hard enough to defend yourselves from the enemy. But when you yourself cause yourself a goal, that's the greatest embarrassment in soccer. And there have been such situations. It's a tremendous embarrassment. The worst goal that Am Yisrael can therefore have is a goal atzmi. If they themselves make the goal to themselves. If they themselves break their own wall. Because the enemy would not be able to penetrate our wall, our lines of defense. And the goalie is the last line of defense, by the way. You have all these other defenders outside. This is the last line of defense. And the only one who can break it down, we're talking about a spiritual wall now, is the people themselves. Not from the outside, it cannot be penetrated. So when the enemy penetrated, it's only because we allowed them to penetrate. We began to take apart this wall on our own. That is why this is such a serious day. This is what led to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Had we not allowed for holes to form on this wall, the enemy would not have been able to penetrate. So let's talk about these three walls. These are the walls that protect Am Yisrael at all times. Let's begin with the wall of the Torah. The Torah compares Parah Adumah to Torah. As it says, Zot Chukat Torah. This is the mitzvah or the chukah in the Torah, referring to the Torah itself. Even though we're dealing with Parah Adumah, the Parah Adumah is compared to the Torah, just like the Parah Adumah, the red heifer, it is able to cleanse us from all the Tum'ah, so does the Torah cleanse us from all the Tum'ah. Today that we don't have sacrifices and we don't have a Parah Adumah, the Torah has even greater significance. That is the only way that one can achieve a kapara for his sins, and that is the only way that one can come closer to Hashem in case he did commit a sin. We don't have a korban. We still have teshuvah, obviously, but we don't have the korban. We don't have the red heifer to become tahor. All we have is Torah. And Rabbi Elyahu Kin, when people used to come to him for a tikkun, for this avon, he did not prescribe 40 fasts. He did not tell them to dip themselves 100 times in the river. He could have made it very difficult for people. According to the Kabbalah, there are many ways that one can achieve kapara. He told especially the men, learn more and more Torah. The Torah has the power in it to be metaher, to be mechaper on one's avonot. Now what happens if one does not have this wall of Torah? So the rabbis already warned us in Pirkei Avot, En bur yereh chet v'lo am haaretz hasid. An ignoramus, a person who's empty, can never become God-fearing. He can never progress because he has no Torah. The only way a Jew can progress and become closer to the Almighty is by way of the Torah, by studying the Torah. So this is therefore essential to the survival of the Jewish neshama, and that is why the rabbis put such a big emphasis on kviut itim la Torah. Set aside time for Torah. Now pay attention, they said itim. They didn't say 3 hours a day, they said itim. What does it mean itim? Some time, 10-15 minutes a day. Before I go to sleep every night, I committed myself to learn at least one Mishnah. Usually that's about 2 o'clock in the morning and my eyes are already closing, but I force myself to at least learn one Mishnah. Just in case that day there was not enough Torah, at least I should not go to sleep that night, at least with one Mishnah. If I'm still able to be awake, I try to learn more, if it's not a difficult Mishnah. Itim, kavata itim la Torah. Upstairs after 120 they will demand, did you set aside time for Torah? You spent 20 minutes breakfast, because you had to have coffee, you had to have croissant, you had to read the LA Times, right? For lunch you also spend some time. For dinner, even more time. What about Torah? Kavata itim, did you set aside some time? Just some time. Show that this is just as important to you as the sports section of the LA Times. Even though the sports section is a kol shtuyot, right? Nonsense. Who cares who won? You want to win, right? So kavata itim la Torah, you need this defense, this wall to protect you. You need to become knowledgeable. How are you going to defend yourself if a Christian tries to question you? Right? How are you going to defend yourself? You may fall into this trap, as many today are falling in this trap, by going to gurus, by going to these cults, because they have questions, they're not happy, they're not knowledgeable about their own religion. It's incredible. That is why Am Yisrael always put a big emphasis on learning, and the Jew was always known as the people of the book. We never parted from the book. This is a very important wall. It's a very important line of defense, to be knowledgeable, to know what our duties are in this world. And that is why it's very important for the men especially to set aside some time for Torah every single day. Rabbis tell us that it's through learning of the Torah that one is able to achieve all the ma'alot, including Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration. And in this generation, the generation of Mashiach, the rabbis tell us that if you want to save yourself from the Chevlei Mashiach, from all the tribulations of Mashiach, from all the wars and from all the pain and suffering, Ya'asok b'Torah gemilut chasadim. Occupy yourself with Torah gemilut chasadim. People will not know what to do. I remember, I wasn't around it, but people tell me that in the 1950s, when the danger of nuclear war was very, very strong and imminent, people bought some land in Brazil. People went to Brazil to buy land there. Why? Because some scientists predicted that in case there was nuclear war, there's one area in that country that will not be contaminated by radiation. I've heard other people that went to New Zealand or Australia where they thought there would be no war. People were looking for all sorts of ways to avoid this nuclear war. Torah, rabbis, the Gemara tells us simply, Ya'asok b'Torah gemilut chasadim. You want to avoid all this problem, you want to stay calm, just occupy yourself with Torah and chesed and kindness, and you will be spared most of the trouble that will come about during the generation of Mashiach. Even though we compare Torah to Parah Adumah, the Torah is even more powerful than Parah Adumah. Because as the Rabbi tells in the Gemara, Torah magna umatzla. It protects us and it saves us. Protects us from the Yetzer Hara. It saves us, it also protects. We have many merits as a result of learning the Torah. So the Torah therefore is able to help us in some ways much more than the Parah Adumah. Whereas the Parah Adumah helps us remove the Tum'ah, the Torah prevents us from falling prey to the Yetzer Hara. Let's speak of, just a little bit about the second wall, the Chomat HaPeh. You will find in this week's Parashat a term called Samit Patil. We talked about an ohel. Anything in the ohel becomes tameh, unless a particular vessel, an earthen vessel. So if in an ohel there is a keli, an earthen keli, which has a Samit Patil on it, it has a seal on it, a closure, the contents inside do not become tameh. And the commentaries learn from that is talking about the choma of the peh, of the lashon. Shmirat ha-lashon, how one has to be very careful what comes out of his mouth. No lashon hara and the like. Because this kind of talk also brings about tumah on the person. And as other commentaries explain, one is even able to recognize an individual by his speech. How he conducts himself, how he talks. Does he ever yell? Does he curse? Does he say lashon hara about other people? Does he ridicule people? Does he get angry at people? All of this coming from the peh. The peh therefore has to have a very important, powerful choma. Because otherwise, if this choma is down, a person can bring upon himself tumah. Because what were we saying before? There are certain ma'asim, there are certain things that we do that cause us to bring the tumah closer to us. One of them, if one removes the wall of Torah, he has no protection. Right? All our enemies can come and threaten us if we don't have that choma, that wall. The second one is the choma of the peh of the mouth. If we do not watch ourselves, we're asking for trouble. And then there is the choma of sniut. Sniut means modesty. Modesty means modesty in clothing, especially for the women. They have to be very careful, not only for themselves, but a woman who's not modest is causing problems to other men who may see her and it may cause them to commit some sin. So the modesty of a woman is not only important for herself, it's important also all around. The modesty in one's behavior, and as far as the men are concerned, when they're away from home, traveling long distance, they have to be very careful. Because their wives are no longer around them, and as the rabbi tells in the Gemara, one's wife is a wall of protection to himself. You don't want to stay single for long. It's dangerous. You want to get married because the wife not only will bring blessing into the house, will offer you a line of defense. You have a woman. You don't have to go search anywhere else. But what happens to those who are continuously traveling to the Far East and stay there for more than a couple of days? They're not there with their wives. They have a Yetzer Hara. So they have to be very, very careful. Because in this area, the Yetzer Hara is extremely powerful. And obviously, if one has Torah and one is careful with his eyes and one protects himself with all the gdarim and siyagim that the rabbis gave us, all the fences that the rabbis put up for us, then it will not fall so easily. But if one just allows for one hole to be pierced in any of these walls, he's asking for trouble. These are some of the ideas expressed in Parashat Chukat. What happens in Parashat Balak? In Parashat Balak, Balak is a very smart person. He observed what went on in the past couple of years as Am Yisrael left Egypt. He heard, he received reports, and what conclusion does he reach? Am Yisrael cannot be defeated on the battlefield. But we still have to defeat them. What does he think of? Creative ways. Creative ways of defeating Am Yisrael. How am I going to defeat Am Yisrael? I have to send Bilam to curse them. Because by cursing them, I can undo the blessings of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov that is protecting this nation. But what does Shlomo HaMelech tell us? The Shir HaShirim, Mayim Rabim lo yuchlu lechabot et ha'ahava. Not all the waters in the world can extinguish the love that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That relationship is strong, no matter what happens, no matter what they do, they curse. Instead of a curse, we got a blessing. Right? That's what happened in the end. Bilam cursed, and instead we got a blessing. Nothing will help. Nothing will help, or is there one thing that unfortunately is able to help the enemy? What did we say before? There is one way that can help the enemy. If unfortunately Am Yisrael on their own do a gol atzmi, bring about themselves a goal to themselves. Therefore, who gave Balak this advice? Bilam. Bilam says, I'm going to weaken this people from within. They're going to make their own goal. And how did he accomplish that? By, of course, putting out the women there and tempting them. And they fell for it. Unfortunately, this is a very delicate area. One can very easily fall. And that's what happens. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu hates znut very, very much. Much more than other sins. Znut means prostitution. Why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu hate znut so much? Because znut, prostitution, is one of those avonot, one of those sins that speeds up the tumah. It brings one to the tumah very, very quickly. And not only does it bring him to the tumah, it makes it very difficult for him to let go. Once you get used to this kind of a tumah, it's addictive. And you can't let go of it. As the term is found, commentaries use it, Shurabo kekelev, the goya, that the Jew falls into her trap, is attached to him like a dog. You know, a dog doesn't let go. Shurabo kekelev. And according to the Kabbalah, this Shurabo kekelev, this attachment of the goya, follows him to the Shamayim. When a person departs from this world, if he did not do proper teshuvah, that avon of the goya follows him upstairs. It's a very, very serious avon to fall into the trap of the tumah of a goya, of prostitution of any form, but especially with goyot. And this tumah is very, very heavy, and eventually, Chaz v'Shalom, leads to attachment to Avodah Zarah. As you see, if you read the Parashat Balak, you will see that what happened after they fell in the trap of the goyot, Vayitzamed Yisrael leBaal Peor. They became attached. Vayitzamed. You know what Vayitzamed means? Itzamed means that you to become one. Tzemed. It doesn't say that they became tied. They became connected. Vayitzamed. They became like one. And when you become like one, it's very difficult to let go. People that fall into the trap of the tum'ah, of a goya, have a very difficult time letting go of it. That is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu hates this so much. This is znut, because this, more than anything else, brings about so much tum'ah, and a tum'ah which is very difficult to let go of. And eventually this tum'ah leads one to Avodah Zarah, to assimilation, to getting close to the goyim. Yes?
You said that the wives are protection. The Jewish men had their wives in the midbar to protect them as a wall against the goyim.
Right.
How do you explain that?
Right. What did we say before? What's the only way these spiritual walls can break up? If the Jew on his own makes holes to this wall. If you invite it in, you bring a television into your house, you're making a hole in the wall. You're going to watch all the pornography. You're going to go and surf in the internet in areas where you shouldn't be. You're making a hole in your wall. The wall is there. We have a wall of protection around us, Baruch Hashem. We have a Bet HaKnesset, we have Torah, we have prayer. If you're married, you have a woman. Right? These are all walls of protection. But you can break these walls You can make holes in this wall on your own. Nobody will touch you. Nobody will endanger you. Only you yourself. Right? And that's what happens to anybody who falls. He got too close. Right? He removed the barriers. He made a hole. He said, look, nothing will happen from a small hole. I just want to peek. Right? But that shatters the whole wall with time. And especially in the area of znut, of prostitution, it's a very, very difficult area for people to control themselves. Even the biggest tzaddikim cannot guarantee that they will not fall unless they have the proper protection. So don't make your own holes. The walls are there for a reason, and if the spiritual wall is intact, nothing from the outside can penetrate it. People have been known, Jews have been known to suffer in the Inquisition terrible torture. Not even torture was able to break them. That is how powerful their wall was. But if you weaken it, if you make holes in it, then it won't last. We spoke therefore about the importance of modesty, how important it is for both the men and women to preserve the wall of modesty, so that neither of them should weaken in that particular area, because this is also a very important area, an area that if it's not well observed can lead to assimilation. When we speak about modesty, there are also additional meanings to tzniut. There is another form of tzniut in the performing of mitzvot. One can do a mitzvah quietly or with great fanfare to show off. When we do a mitzvah, we can do it with tzniut, not to show off. Lo lasot roshem. That is also a form of tzniut, not to take credit for something. We do it l'shem shamayim. That's also modesty. Rabbis tell us, Le'olam yadan yireh shamayim baseter. One should always be God-fearing at home, where no one sees him. A lot of people try to impress others that they're God-fearing. The Shmoneh Esrei, it takes them 25 minutes just to say. They want to show that they're God-fearing. They're very careful in how they handle people. They're very careful in how they perform the mitzvot in public. But just try to see how they behave at home. Ask their wife. He's a monster. He abuses his wife. He curses at her. Nobody sees him, so he can do whatever he wants. Rabbis tell us, Olam yeh adam yireh shamayim baseter. True yirat shamayim is when nobody sees you. Let's see how you are when nobody sees you. Because when people see you, probably are ashamed. Probably want to make an impression. So tzniut in this area means, let's see how tzanua you are in your own home, not in public. If you look at the Haftarah of Parashat Balak, you will find that all these three walls are merumazim, are insinuated in the last words of the Haftarah. The last words of the Haftarah are, what does Hashem want of you? What does He expect of you? What does Hashem expect of you? What does He ask of you? Just do what is right, what is according to the Torah. Love kindness and be modest with Hashem. In these three, Asot Mishpat, Ahavat Chesed, Vatznei Alechet, you find all three walls. The wall of the Torah is Keneged Asot Mishpat. Follow the Torah. Do what is right. The Ahavat Chesed, love of kindness, has to do with the wall of the mouth. What's the connection between the wall of one's mouth and loving of kindness? Because one who does not protect his mouth, who speaks about others, is obviously not kind to others. You want to be kind to others, then don't badmouth them. Be careful how you judge others. That is perhaps the connection. And the third wall, Vatznei Alechet, that is a tzniut, the modesty that one has to show in his behavior and in his dress code. We spoke about Tum'ah and how that creates tremendous distance between us and the Almighty. There's an additional area or additional item that causes also tremendous distance between us and the Almighty. That is called Kfiyut Tovah, when one is ungrateful. Many of you perhaps know an individual like that who's ungrateful. Well, how do you know him? Because you may have done him a favor and he does not recognize that favor. That's called Kafui Tovah. When a person is ungrateful, he becomes basically distant from you. If we are ungrateful to Hashem, little by little we become ungrateful, because what is ungratefulness? You don't recognize that somebody did you a favor. But it's a fact he did you a favor. No. Kfiyut Tovah comes from the word lichpot. When a person is ungrateful, what's going on psychologically in his mind? Zemagiali. It's coming to me. In other words, the other individual did not actually do you a favor. It's coming to me. You minimize it. You minimize it, and as a result of minimizing the favor, you're losing that connection between you and the individual. When you feel grateful to someone, you are connected to him. You thank him. You do not forget about him. After all, he did you a favor. When you are ungrateful, there's distance. There's no connection. You don't want to remember him. What does ungratefulness have to do with anything? Anybody know where do we see ungratefulness in Parashat Chukat? All of a sudden, Am Yisrael begins to complain about what? About the man. This lechem kelokel, this terrible bread. Even though kelokel has different meanings, basically they were saying this very strange kind of a bread that we ingest in our system and nothing happens. Most things that you ingest, they come out later on. So they were concerned about this. What kind of a bread is this? And they started complaining about the bread. And this bread was a tremendous favor to Am Yisrael. It had spiritual nutrients. And here they're complaining about it. So the commentaries explain they're ungrateful. But wait a minute, they saw so many miracles. They saw how Hashem was good to them. How could one become so ungrateful? Well, I'll tell you. President Charles de Gaulle used to say as follows. Nations don't have friends, they have interests. We see that all the time. Do you think America is Israel's friend? No, they have interests. Nations don't have friends, it's true. And even amongst people, amongst human beings, not too many people have true friendships. What do they have? Interests. Why? Why are solid friendships very rare? They're possible, but they're rare. Because a human being is selfish by nature. And because of his selfishness, he cannot give of himself too much. Just a little bit. I'll just do this for you, but not more than that. One cannot easily give of himself, and true friendship requires you to be able to give of yourself as much as possible. No limits. That's rare because we're selfish. Now, when somebody does a favor to another individual, and the other individual returns the favor, do you think he's returning the favor because he really likes the individual? Because he's thankful? No. Lo na'im lo, as we say in Hebrew. It's not pleasant. He doesn't feel comfortable not being able to pay him back the favor. Does he really on his own want to do it? No, not necessarily. Because of that selfishness. When people say, I love this girl. The girl comes home after a date. In Israel, this is very common. And she says to her parents, I'm getting married. What do you mean you're getting married? You just went out a couple times. He's crazy about me. He loves me. That's ridiculous. How could he love you after 2-3 dates? He loves himself. That is what is happening. It's all ta'ava. It's all desire. He says it to you nicely. He uses beautiful words. But in reality, he does not love you. He loves himself. True love only happens with time. It's something that grows. You can have, of course, attraction. You can be emotionally with someone. You can like some things about someone. But true love doesn't happen until later on. So when one says that very quickly after meeting you, you should know he loves himself, not you. It's a ta'ava, it's a desire. What happened with Am Yisrael? Am Yisrael had this ta'ava, they had this desire. They were selfish, they thought of themselves. When one thinks of himself, he cannot devote himself completely to another individual. Even though they observed all this kindness and all this good being given to them, they didn't think of it as a favor. Because when you want something, when you expect something, or when you demand something, you think it's coming to you. It is not possible for you, therefore, to try to reflect on the kindness and the goodness of the heart of the other individual. Because you're thinking about yourself. This is something that you see throughout the 40 years in the desert, various groups amongst Am Yisrael, and especially the Erev Rav, complaining, thinking about themselves, thinking of going back to Egypt. But look at all the goodness, all the kindness, all the miracles. No, when you think of yourself, you can't reflect on that. You don't see that. You only see yourself. You see your own desire. And that is why they were Kfuyei Tova. That is how they were able to complain despite seeing all the miracles. So how do you overcome this ungratefulness? One way perhaps is for an individual to remember the Shum Davar Magia Lo, nothing is coming to him. That perhaps because of all his sins, he shouldn't receive anything. And if Hashem was kind to him, it's because of the chesed, because of Hashem's kindness to him. Not because he deserves it. One should always remember that everything comes from Hashem. One should share his wealth with others. These are just some ideas of how one can overcome the selfishness and the the ungratefulness that he may have in him. Realize that everything is from Hashem. Share your wealth with others, and don't demand anything. Don't think that anything is coming to you. Nothing is coming to you. Make believe that nothing is coming to you. This is a very important point. I'm so depressed when I hear young couples who just recently got married and they have expectations from their parents. And some of them go even further. You gave that child more. And this leads to big fights and arguments. Don't expect anything. Earn it all on your own. Some people started from scratch. Do you know that your parents and grandparents had zero when they began their life and they worked very hard? A lot of the people in this generation, especially the young couples, they are so pampered and so spoiled that they expect everything. They're ungrateful, therefore, for what they received till now. Be thankful for what you received. Don't expect any more. If you get used to not expecting, not demanding of anybody, it'll be easier for you to overcome this problem of ungratefulness. You'll be thankful for everything you get. It reminds me of another area, another problem area, about tashchit. People throw away food very easily these days. A Holocaust survivor does not throw away food so easily. He looks even for potato peels, anything. He therefore values any food that he sees. We take things for granted. We're very spoiled. Just a few additional pieces of advice on how one can strengthen his walls that protect him and not weaken his resolve. One way is not to be pampered. Another way is to always look on how to do the will of Hashem and not your own will. And as the Jose Melublin used to say as well on Parashat Chukat, there are some individuals who claim that they have nothing to repair, that they're perfect. And he says on the words of Paraduma, whoever claims Asher en bamum, that he has no physical defect, is siman shelo ala alea ol. It's an indicator that he does not have the yoke of heaven on him. Nobody should claim he has nothing to fix, nothing to repair. As some husbands do when they have marital problems. Everything is okay with them. She is to blame. There's no such thing. If we wouldn't have something to repair, we wouldn't be here. We would be together with the Malachim. If we're down here, that means we have something to repair. So the Jose Melubim therefore says one should always go about finding what needs to be repaired and not assume that everything is okay. That's another way of being on top of the situation and not losing control. Another idea is that in case you made a mistake, what does the Torah call a mistake? Shegaga, right? What does the Torah prescribe for such mistakes? Korban Chatat, feel sorry, show remorse, confess, bring it to the Bet HaMikdash. If you ever make a mistake at home, husband and wife, there are many times there are misunderstandings, mistakes are made, things are said that should not have been said. Just be remorseful. Say, I'm sorry. Attempt to repair it as best as possible. And don't delay it. Because what happens many times is people delay repairing all their problems, and after 15 years, all the love has been lost. Now they go to a marriage counselor, and he can't help them. She has no more feelings for him. I see this all the time. Very, very difficult to repair something that has gone sour for so long. Something happens, and things will happen, even amongst the best friends. Take care of it immediately. Repair it. Don't delay the repair. Just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to get back to Him, get closer to Him again, we became distant as a result of a head by a shegaga. Bring a korban. Come close. Come back. Do teshuvah. In the same way between a husband and wife, something has happened that created distance between them. Don't delay. Immediately do whatever is necessary to repair the relationship. One of the greatest wonders in Parashat Balak is Bilam himself. What's the wonder about Bilam? Anybody know? No, what's the wonder? What question do we have about Bilam? This is a man who, on the level of prophecy, is greater than Moshe, we're told. He knew so much. He saw so much. How could he stoop to such a low level of tumah, of cursing, of trying to listen to Balak? Doesn't he know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is protecting Am Yisrael? Am Yisrael is going to enter Eretz Yisrael. Am Yisrael receive the Torah. They have an important mission. I mean, he knows all of this. There are many Goyim that don't know anything. Some of them I met in Pennsylvania once. They thought Jews had horns. They never saw one. A lot of them are ignorant. But Bilam was very far from being ignorant. He basically spoke with Hashem. How could he go therefore against the will of Hashem? How could he even dream of contradicting Hashem? The answer is very simple, because he was thinking about himself. That's all. When one thinks about himself, his own desires, his own interests, it's like the ungrateful person. He cannot reflect on what's going on the other side. All he's thinking is about himself. The riches, the money that he was promised, the kavod that he would get. When a person is after ta'avot, he's basically thinking about himself. It will not be possible for him to think of somebody else. And of Hashem, even less so. He doesn't see him. Bilam, even though was aware of Hashem, knew everything that there is to know. Right? Nevertheless, because of his ta'avot, because he thought of himself, he fell in this trap. Who is the opposite of Bilam? The end of Parashat Balak. Pinchas. Pinchas is the exact opposite of Bilam. How is he able to risk his life and do what he did to kill the two sinners? Risking his life. He was a young man. Only because he did not think of himself, he thought of Kvod Shamayim. You see the difference? Two individuals. One representing the Tumah, one representing the Kedusha. One representing himself, thinking of himself, one thinking of Kavod Shamayim first. Whoever only thinks of Kavod Shamayim first will be able to take all the risks and will not be afraid, he will not be concerned. Because that's the only thing that's on his mind. Only Kavod Shamayim, what Hashem wants, not what I want. During these days, between Shiva Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, critical days, dangerous days, we have to be very, very careful, not only with where we go and what we do, but with Kvod Shamayim. Because what happened on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz? The wall that protected us broke down. And as a result of that wall breaking down, the Bet HaMikdash broke down. This is therefore an opportune time for Am Yisrael to strengthen the walls that we spoke about. The wall of Torah, the wall of the mouth, not speaking Lashon Hara, and the wall of Tzniut. If we, Bezrat Hashem, strengthen these walls, then Bezrat Hashem we will have the zechut of rebuilding the wall of the Bet HaMikdash. Amen.